Hey, this is Kenny Hickey from Sun Don't Shine. Listen to our new single, The Promise Song, and you're watching John the Ninja!
Progress. Clock is going, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? It's John the Ninja live in the dojo. You know what, Studio CB, wherever. I might be in Florida, I might be in Jersey. It is what we do in the dojo because we're universal. Just like the magic this man creates. His music is a universal magic. But I digress. He was literally inspired to listen to music by WPLJ. He's a Brooklyn native. Might be in Staten Island now. But it was seeing Ace Frehley that made him want to play guitar. And the album Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, that dove him headfirst into rock and roll. But I digress because this man loves all the bands I love. He loves Judas Priest and Smashing Pumpkins, U2, Blondie, The Cars, even gave props to Phil Collins when he did the stuff with Disney. But dare I say, the work he's done with his bands have created a much more important cult following. A little bit of dark, a little bit of humor, but gets the point through. The person I'm talking about is Kenny Hickey. And the band he is representing today is going to be Sun Don't Shine. Now, that's not to take away from the other important bands he's been a part of, namely saying Typo Negative. But we're here to talk about Sun Don't Shine, the brainchild of Andrew Spalding of Corpse Records. This man has comprised some of the best musicians in our industry. He's got Kenny on guitars and vocals. He's also got Kirk Windstein of another podcast friend, Crowbar, and Johnny Kelly of Typo Negative and Patriarchs in Black, and Todd Strange, also Crowbar. It just gets better because the band themselves are able to channel not just the influences that they have and bring their own little taste, but to create something new and reputable. Something forceful that makes the music you hear nowadays take notice that rock and roll is here to stay. You can truly hear how the chemistry between the members made the music come together, especially in songs like Dreams Always Die and Cryptomnesia, which got a little bit of love in it, and I also got to say it right, but we'll get there later. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you a Mr. Kenny Hickey. Sir, how are you?
How you doing, man? Great introduction. Thank you. Somebody's been doing their homework.
I appreciate that, sir. Also, I got to ask you, just because your band has been so integral to my life. The movie the video game as well, has been so integral to my life. Do you still have the Sub-Zero tattoo?
Well, the Sub-Zero tattoo basically is the negative tattoo. See?
Nice.
Sub-Zero. So we got these tattoos when we were called Sub-Zero, and then we had to change the name because there was another band in a local borough called Sub-Zero. So it wasn't only a matter of finding a new name, it was also finding a new name to match the tattoos we already had. It's Typo Negative.
And you know what? I was wondering because I figured I saw the Typo tattoo, but I thought you guys got another tattoo. I didn't know.
No, we got the negative symbols attached to the name Sub-Zero. I mean, thank God we didn't put the name Sub-Zero under it, but
yeah, I just found it interesting because especially with Mortal Kombat coming out in the 90s and you guys being a part of that tune, I was curious if you had anything to do with the album process, because they did take Blood and Fire from Bloody Kisses and put it on their record, but it was a remix version, and you can definitely hear the differences. I was wondering if you guys had any say about that.
Josh and Peter remixed it. It's their remix.
Okay.
But we didn't really have anything more to do with it than that. You know, it was licensed through Roadrunner to the. I mean, I have a platinum plaque for it hanging on my wall. But you know, I think we were forewarned. There was one of the movies we were forewarned about that we were actually going to be in the soundtrack for. There was other surprises, like I Know What You Did Last Summer. Nobody told us about that until I went to the movies and I heard a song come up in the opening credits. So.
What was that feeling when you heard you guys playing on the credits? Because, you know, there's a feeling when you see yourself on TV, you hear yourself on radio for the first time. What about the silver screen? How did that feel?
Kind of weird, you know? It's weird because you go to movies your whole life, right? It's like one of the first mediums you go to and to actually hear something that you're playing in. It's kind of like it's a strange out of body kind of feeling you get, you know? I mean, it's cool that it's in it because now, like, I mean, that movie it's still shown every Halloween, and like, it's definitely had some staying power. That movie, I wasn't a big fan of the movie itself, but it's cool to be a part of it.
You know, it makes me wonder when you're a kid, right, and you see these musicians playing and they inspire you to play it. We know that Ace Frehley was the one that kind of made you want to pick up the guitar, and the story of like, oh, I hate those Kiss guys, but I love that Rock and Roll All Night song, and your friend was like, bro, they didn't stop, they're the same group, you know. But you spent such a significant amount of time in the basement playing Black Sabbath and learning those chops. I wanted to know What was it about the Sabbath song, that actual song, Black Sabbath, that you gravitated to? Did it have a little bit to do with your upbringing? Was it just the fact that, when you're a teenager, the darker things feel a little good?
I was about 8 or 9 when I heard that, so I was terrified. It terrified me. It was like I was addicted to horror movies when I was that age, right? I'd get up early Saturday morning and watch creature features and all the monster movies and stuff. So when I heard that, it was the sonic manifestation of a horror movie, and I was terrified, and it was so powerful, and right to me gut, it hits you right in the gut. Those first 3 notes, hooked. And I was I was about 8 years old.
So how did you go back and forth between Sabbath and again Yellow Brick Road? Because you have such a diverse love of music.
Well, if you're going to go to Yellow Brick Road, now I was like 5 or 6 when that came out, and it was all over the radio, and I loved that record, and I loved Elton John, I loved Rocket Man, all that stuff. So that was my first turn on to like rock and roll was Elton John because he was exploding when I was just becoming musically conscious.
Was it really Sabbath that solidified your understanding and then you progressed from there? Would you say Iommi's the guitarist you took the most from as far as learning to play guitar?
I think I took a little from everyone, but Iommi is definitely the root core influence for me, definitely
Well,
musically.
you always say the big three: Zeppelin, Sabbath, and Floyd, and it's very
Yes.
evident in your playing a couple of songs. We'll hit as well, but it's so cool to see what you've been able to do within your time. Something I really love. I want to stick with the playing real quick because just as a nerd, because I love playing too. You know, I love your use of sliding on a guitar with the pick slide. And everybody's got their little things that set them apart, and I feel like you're able to use the pick slide just like a cymbal. Like every time there's a slide, there's something special about to happen, or it's adding to the song just perfectly. I wanted to know if you considered that one of your specialties. If you ever noticed, like, hey, this is something that's mine, and I made it my own.
I think it's something, especially when you only have 3 instruments, well, we have 2 guitars and a bass to choose from, that a song calls for at moments, which is a big anticipation buildup into an explosive point. You know what I mean? And it's just a tool you use to bring that on. Brown, you know what I mean? It builds you up the anticipation for the big chord, for the big breakdown. So it's definitely something that it's just calls for the song. So if you're going to do it with a slide pick, because you have 2 guitar players and a bass player, that's great with distortion. You could also do it with keyboards. You can do it with other sound effects if you have that in your band. But something's going to have to be there to build that moment of tension up and then release it. It's a tension and release, a slide, basically. And typo we definitely took it to our own level because it was super slow and long. And we do slides 4 times as long as usual. You know what I mean? So it was just drawn out, more dramatic. And also one very important technique to slides, the slide always sounds better, more smoother, more abrasive with a lighter pick, on the edge of a lighter pick.
Oh, I'm gonna have to try that because I always use heavies.
Heavy's it's a little more smooth sounding, it's a little more muffled, but you'll get a more of a scratch at a light pick.
You've been able to play so many places. You played all over the world. One of the biggest shows was Whacking. But when I had Johnny on, one show, the shows that touched my heart that he mentioned was when you guys would play in Philadelphia for Halloween. And I just wanted to pick your brain of what your memory was for those shows.
We played there every Halloween.
It's just like your general, like, yo, that one holiday show there just was too much, or the Corp show, or it just your overall remembrance of doing them at the Tracadero, which is now gone, sadly.
Is it gone? I think it came back and then it went again, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great place, man. It was like a home away from home. So it was always sold out for us on Halloween there. It was always a blast. A great place to play. Another great place to play was Harpos in Detroit. That's gone now too. And that place was huge. It had like a 5 foot high stage, and it had the Saturday Night Fever dance floor in the middle. And actually, the last show that Typo ever played was at Harpo's on Halloween night in Detroit in 2009. That's a very fond memory, that show.
Was there ever a show that went just perfect? Not saying
No,
like things didn't
never,
happen,
never.
like, but something like, wow, you know what, that was a little too smooth for us. I feel like something's off.
No, there's always a rough spot, But you don't really, I don't really, we never really gauged it by how well it went for us technically or how well we played, but it's more about how the audience responds. No, when you're walking out of like a show and you hear the kids, or you go off stage and then the night's over and you hear the kids walking out of the theater and they're screaming, yeah, you had a great show. You know what I mean? That's a great feeling.
Every time you guys get mentioned, there's always wonderful stories about how well you guys treated the opening act, the random fan. What do you think kept you guys grounded to keep that personableness?
Reality, being very in touch with reality. I mean, we never turned up, we never turned into millionaires. We never sort of broke that top level to where our egos were just indefinitely fed by a cocoon of people around us, never telling us no. You know, so we're always very in touch with reality. We're always very sort of a blue collar rock band. So hard work and having to eat shit still. You know what I mean? That's what keeps you grounded, right?
But the story in itself is so amazing. Like, you guys were playing gigs for like $4 to get in, getting paid with pizza in the basement, and then to be able to have that opportunity, especially after the Motley Crue tour that broke you, and then you were able to perform and get exposed to a wider audience. I am curious if I'm correct mathematically. I may be wrong. You're approaching 4 years sober at this point. Am I correct, or is it still three?
5 years yesterday.
Congrats, man. That's
Yesterday.
You said that you were at the time drinking since 12, and it was a struggle to get to sobriety. I wanted to know what really made you say, okay, I have to lock in, because there was always that talk between you and Peter of like, somebody's
Yeah.
gonna go.
Well, I had been to a rehab around 2000, and I was sober for like 3 years, and then it fell off again. This is like around 2000. Went on a long tirade of beer maintenance and this and that. And believe me, man, you could bring yourself pretty low just on beer. I proved it to myself. So a lot of bad shit happened to me. I got hit by a vehicle, my face smashed up. I got plastic surgery, broke my shoulder. Still went on drinking after that, and I just drank myself into the point where everything, my family was falling apart. Everything was falling apart around me, and I checked into rehab about 5 years ago, a place in Florida. I must have been what was I? 52 years old, something like that. Wake up in detox. 52 years old, surrounded by, probably the average age was like 17 to like 25 boneheads, doing drugs and running amok. And I'm like, how the fuck did I end up here again? And that's what really made me determine. It was like, this has got to stop. I mean, I'm not 20 years old anymore. This isn't cute anymore. This is just ridiculous. I was very ill too, like physically. You could see, like, I was bloated and looked terrible, and so I was just determined, and I just went nuts. I quit everything. I quit everything right there. I quit cigarettes. Everyone in rehab thought it was nuts. I quit cigarettes, caffeine, and everything all at once. And I went back to caffeine since, but nothing else. So that was determination. I mean, this is it. The buck stops here. You hit 50 years old. You don't plan. You're not like everything. Nothing's in the future anymore. Once you hit 50, my friend, you'll see. You're gonna hit there one day. You know how you always live in a, oh, I'm going to accomplish this and I'm going to accomplish that when I grow up and I'm going to do this when I grow up. Well, guess what? When you hit 50, you're there, kid. And to find myself in that situation was just unacceptable. You know, so that's what really made me more determined than anything else. It either stops now or it doesn't, or I die like half of my other friends.
When talking about it in prior interviews, you said that your systems have to change. And as you're saying, 50 years, I can only imagine the encouragement that everybody else with you in that group is like, yo, if he can fight for this, if he can do all these dramatic changes and cut all this stuff off, I can too. The younger generation always looks to the people before us. What now would you say is your reward system? What were the key reward systems that you had to put in place, and how are you continuing to solidify those? I'm very curious about that process you mentioned.
The rewards are vast. I mean, first of all, my wife isn't continuously angry with me. My kids aren't continuously embarrassed or angry with me. Right? Reward system, I'm clearer than ever. I can play better than ever. I could play more hours. I'm more creative. That's the biggest a reward, which I didn't anticipate because you always like try to connect being fucked up with being creative. You know what I mean? Because every musician has this illusion created in their heads, from when they were growing up, which is bullshit. You know, so I was more creative. And people around me trust me now. They believe in me. You know, um, I have clarity. I'm not depressed every day. I'm not full of anxiety when I wake up in the morning. I mean, I love being sober. Every day is full of hope now instead of the opposite. Being healthy and strong because I work out too. On top of it is that releases all kinds of oxytocin and endorphins and so I feel great all the time. Which, for most of my life, when you're drinking, you only feel great when you first get high when you're drinking, and then it's all downhill from there. I mean, you feel like shit for the most part, unless you keep drinking.
When you initially came back out and started writing again, you said you got songs for everything. Every emotion and feeling. There's a Beatles song we're gonna talk about later that you love. But I was wondering, for me, when I went through some heavy stuff, there were certain songs that that was how I was coping. That was the only way, because reality can be really tough. I was wondering if there's any songs that you really gravitated to, or still do now that you have this clarity.
I really just pretty much revisit the stuff from my from when I was growing up. Not too much Floyd. I love Floyd. I'm addicted to Floyd, but they're drag your ass down. You know what I mean? You have to be in a very good mood to listen to Pink Floyd. Otherwise, waters will tear you down. But I mean, I won't be visiting. I don't really revisit things like Kiss too often, but a lot of Zepplin still. I go back to frigging Page in the catalog a lot. And even Elton John, even or Queen, a lot of Queen. A lot of '70s stuff.
And I know you bought it had to have been News of the World for Queen when it first came out.
That
How
was my
cool!
first record I ever bought. Yeah.
You still got it?
No, I wish.
Hold that thought. There's another thing I was wondering if you had in studio with you, the Flying V, your Flying V that Peter, I don't want to say decimated. He just cleaned up.
Oh, I have it. Yeah, I have it.
Just for fun. I know it doesn't get the same sound out of it anymore. But do you ever just pick it up and jam, play?
No,
No.
I haven't picked it up in 35 years. I think. I don't think it's. I don't think it. I mean, you're making me curious. Maybe I should string it and put some strings on it and see if anything will come out of it.
Yeah, because the lore from that. I mean, I can imagine. Oh, why not just strum and pick it up, play.
Hey, you're
Even if
right. You're right. You're right. Maybe I should.
I've had the fortunate opportunity to write with so many people, and the one tune that I thought was funny was Silvertombs, where you wrote the riff with your daughter, and she didn't want it. She thought it was too heavy. Insomnia was, and then hearing Insomnia finish, I was like, she might have been right, good sir. I don't know. It had a little bit of a hearing it on the acoustic when I first heard you play it versus hearing it on finish
It was
was.
more bluesy on acoustic. I mean, it was more like a blues song. And when you put all the heavy stuff in, it transforms it.
It did get me thinking of when you create music with with her. How does that differ than with all the guys you've created? Because sometimes, depending on what time period of your career, sometimes it was just easy flowing back and forth, like it is with Sun Don't Shine. Sometimes it was like button heads. But busting balls or not, the process was ensuing. I was wondering, like, do you take the same process when you write with her?
She was playing an instrument, so I'd have to start something, a chord somewhere, something somewhere, and then she would just take off. She got a very creative mind, so I did like sort of all the bare bones work for the music and putting it together, but it was her arrangements and her melody ideas for vocals and her lyrics. So it was kind of like really both of us feeding off of each other simultaneously. more than me saying, "Oh, I got this whole part and this whole thing," you know. Because obviously it didn't work out like that. It didn't work like that with insomnia. You know, it was to her taste. So she had to be like sort of sitting with me with the acoustic, you know, and I'll just start strumming around and something will just start happening, you know.
But how cool is that to write with your kid?
It's fantastic. She's unbelievably talented, and like what really blew my mind is when I first put her on a mic in my studio, which most people know that have done it before. Singing with headphones on professionally and being in tune is not easy. It's a very difficult skill that you develop over years and years. And she just was a natural. She blew me away. I couldn't believe how accurate she was the first time she tried it. Was jealous. I've been working my whole life, to try to sing in tune. And now I'm pretty good at it. And it took decades, and there's some people just born with it.
Well, it's like they say, the kids pick up where we left off. So they just kind of, it's sometimes genetic, sometimes it's both. They got this wonderful ability to just see and do before they get hit a certain age. But I want to get to Sun Don't Shine because you guys, it is such a great combination of two bands, same influences, drinking buddies for the longest time and getting together. And I had to ask, first things first, when you guys changed the name from I Am to Sun Don't Shine, is it true that you were in a pool, sitting back, just lounging about, or was that just for another interview to hear that?
No, I was in the pool. I was in the pool. I was at Todd's house in the pool lounging out, and then he was like, Kirk wants to change the name. I said, well, why didn't Kirk tell me? And I was like, I want to change the name too. Well, I wanted to change it. We all wanted to change the name. Nobody said anything. You know what I mean? So that's how it first started.
Can we talk about Andrew? Because he was tour merch guy for you guys. Danzig, he was drinking buddies with Kirk and the guys over every time tour ended. He'd go back home to Louisiana. And especially after my conversation with Tommy Buckley of Crowbar, man, what a great chat. Gave me so much more time after the interview. And every time I deal with Louisiana, every time I deal with people from that area, so heartwarming, so kind.
They're real people, man. They're real grounded people. I love people from Louisiana.
So, what was your first thoughts? What was the first time meeting him? And I have to really stress how great of an individual he is for all of you guys to go. Like, we have to come through for him. There's no question. We got to do this for you.
I first met Andrew. I was playing with Danzig, Blackest of the Black. I think it was like 2009, something like that. I did a 2-week tour with him. And we had Glenn flew us into LA, and I was there I think the day before at the La Park Hotel. And I had met him. I think he was walking by my hotel and had a bottle of vodka or something. And I had seen him earlier at the rehearsal studio or something. And I was just lonely, and I just opened the door and said, "Hey, want to hang out?" So yeah, sure. I came in, sat down, and we proceeded to drink an entire bottle of vodka and tell each other's life stories, and that's how we met. So it was like we had a bond immediately right from the beginning. And then I took him over from after that short tour with Danzig. I took him over to work with Typo, and he was with Typo for the whole last record and through all that touring cycle to the end.
When Kirk told you how he writes, of course, nobody's Zepplin. We can't just spend all the time we got in studio and just waste it. Very ACDC. We come in, we go out. Let's chop chop.
Kirk was like, I do most of my writing in the studio, and like he didn't want to prepare anything. I was like, I can't like that. I was shitting my pants even thinking of that. Just walking into his studio with nothing.
Do you think that was more of just like pushing you out of your comfort zone, or was it a little bit more rooted in another experience? Because if we look back at like the old school heavy metal, old school music, yeah, Sabbath, get it in and get it out. ACDC, I've already mentioned.
Well, you at least rehearsed it. At least you're in a rehearsal studio. Even Typo did everything in a rehearsal studio. We developed the stuff. It's a little different to say, all right, guys, you're on the air, studio time. You have nothing written. Never mind rehearsing it.
Take me back to that first session where you sent him the tapes and he came up with some stuff. Like, how did it feel magically? Because you guys had this instant connection.
It was very like, I had like a few ideas. I had a bunch of ideas, but I just took a few and I sent it to him. And he was like, I like these ideas. All right, I'm going to work on something for that. But like Kirk didn't have any way to like record his ideas and send them back to me. So I think I had another revised idea I sent to him before I got on the plane the day before. So I heard nothing from his side. I had no idea what he was going to come out with. I just had a few ideas that I sent, and they were kind of like really slow and dirgy. Like Dreams Always Die was originally like really atmospheric, with full of with delay. It was like wow now, wow. It was like really slow and dirgy. So that's one of the ideas I had. And then when we got into rehearsal studio together, Kirk was like, "Well, I got this idea for this," and he had this hardcore part. It sounded like something off Slow, Deep, and Hard. You know what I mean? It was like, "Wah." It's like, well, that's interesting. Okay, we'll combine that with that. And then he had the outro part, the riff, the dun dun boom, right? So I was like, well, let's combine them. And then Johnny just picked up the tempo on everything. So like it took off tempo wise, which made it better and made it more exciting. And at some point, we were really trying to force this hardcore part into the song. And Kirk was just like, well, maybe it doesn't need a goddamn hardcore. Let's just take that out. And that's how it was done. It was done literally in an hour. In the rehearsal, we did rehearse one day before in the rehearsal studio. So we put these two parts together in an hour. Had no idea what we were going to do over it, vocally or anything else.
And that ending where you're singing over it.
That happened last day. Yeah. So we went in and then we recorded these two parts, not knowing anything vocally what was going to happen. I had kind of like a rough idea of what the verse was going to be. You know what I mean? Or what I might do or try. No lyrics, nothing. And we just sat in the studio together as a band with Johnny playing, and we just jammed this thing out, and we did extended endings for like 20 minutes long for each one, going on, trying all different variations. So we had a whole lot of shit recorded. And then Johnny had to go because he had a gig. Boom, he was out of here. All right, drummer gone. Now we had all this shit, and we had to make some sense of it. And that was kind of challenging. We were like listening to all this outro stuff and like, oh, that's a good drum part. All right, let's put that one there, and then we'll build up to there. We kind of like pieced it together, the ending of it. And then it was time to do vocals, and I think Andrew picked us up in the morning at the hotel, and I was writing the lyrics in the van on the way to the studio. So I had no idea what was going to happen. Got behind the mic and tried it. And, I had no idea what was going on. I looked out at the booth. Everybody seemed really impressed and I could really like that. I said, all right, good. We'll keep going this way. That's how it all came together. By the end of the day, sitting there writing the harmonies for the ending over Kirk's part was just right off the cuff, Well, let's do this. And then Kirk sing this harmony and, we'll just repeat the line over and over. And then we laid leads. I laid part of a lead and then Kirk did.
One thing you didn't mention, but you've mentioned it before, your wife was the one that gave you an idea for the lyrics.
Yes.
You're like, hey, so what am I going to write about? She said, I love hearing stories where, our significant other gives us that boost up. When she said that and when it clicked, who did you think of?
Think of Peter.
Just Peter?
Think of Friends Lost, Friends Gone, which I have enough of them, many of them. And so I was thinking about Peter, I was thinking about my friends that I've lost, And it didn't really click. She suggested it, and I just was so up against the wall. I had been up against the wall for ideas for 24 hours already, right? Oh, you got to come up with this. You got to come up with that. You know what I mean? So it's very stressful, right? And so I was like, okay, I'll just go with what you want. I'll go with whatever you suggest. So I just started writing off of that, and that was in the hotel before we got in the van on the way to the studio. So it was fresh. One thing was really cool about the experience is every single thing we recorded, every aspect of what we recorded was fresh. It was brand spanking new, minutes old, if not hours old, which made the whole thing sound fresh, It made it come out with that initial excitement you have when you first record something, a new idea, which you never get again if you try to do it over and over again and try to, make it perfect and do it 1,000 times, It has that element of electricity in it.
The excitement you have now talking about it, that that inspiration.
It was very adrenaline. Yeah, it was a lot of adrenaline, because I'm here. It's me, Kirk here. We're kind of like responsible for coming up with this song, and we don't want to let anyone down. You don't want to let anyone down ever when you're writing something. You're not just writing like this. The phase of writing something for yourself, that's how it begins, right? Oh, I really like the way this sounds, cool. But it becomes a totally different thing when you have other people depending on you now.
You had a time where you were done with the business. You got done a show.
Long time.
And like I can't do this anymore. I'm not gonna stop playing. But as far as touring and busting my ass on the road, it wasn't worth it. And then I hear stories like this where oh my God, I'm anxiety, but the energy and
Yeah.
when you look back and comparing the two, did you just need a break from the touring and from the overall business and to find that love again? Like Rudy Sarzo said, he had to step away from Ozzy and find the love of playing again. Was that what you had to do?
Yes, yes. Amongst other things, I was not just searching for that to rediscover my love of music. And I was searching for who the hell I was or what I was going to do, and I was also clouding it with alcohol. A lot of alcohol, a lot of booze. So kind of falling off the edge into a dark place where it took me too long to get out of. I wish I would have quit 20 years ago, but I didn't. It is what it is.
But you're playing with friends and you're still continuing this monstrous, monumental career, legendary. I do have to ask because I've had Johnny on as well, and I've talked to people that have played with him. I've had wonderful conversations with him himself, and the general consensus is when it comes to mixing, it's always a back and forth. Some people had some choice words saying he's a pain in the ass to an extent, and
He is.
I wanted your take on why that back and forth works because he's so good at noticing what the song needs.
Well, I think that Johnny is an organic drummer, right? So, and he's living in an age of canned drums. You listen to all around all the metal bands, all the rock bands, they're all doing sound replacement on drums. So a lot of this shit is very synthetic, and a lot of it sounds that way. So what Johnny insists upon is getting real drum sounds and getting the sound up to the level of that. I mean, it's hard to get anything to sound up to the levels of sound replacement. There's sound replacement, you can make everything sound perfect. You know what I mean? You're never gonna make an organic kit sound perfect. But that's the personality in it. So I think that he gets very on it because in order to get that to sound good, you got to work hard at it. You have to be listening to every detail. And he's a very specific vision of what he wants to sound like, which is sort of like physical graffiti but modernized. You know. So that's why he gets picky, and he's a bit of a pain in the ass. But I think we all can be a pain in the ass. All picky. With certain, I'm very picky with my vocals. I do all my vocals now in my own studio, most of them. I did do those two vocals for those two songs, Cryptomnesia too. Part of it, most of that in Louisiana. But I do like to take time and get my vocals right
This
on.
this band has had the idea of being bluesy and classic rock and light and dark. You guys are the whole spectrum. You have no sitbacks. Nothing's gonna stop you. But again, we come to the reoccurring phrase: Zeppelin, Sabbath, Floyd, and Cryptomnesia. If I finally said that
It's
correctly.
actually pronounced Cryptomnesia.
Cryptomnesia. We're gonna say it again. Cryptomnesia. Say it with me, people. Cryptomnesia. Rock and roll. Thank you. I appreciate that. That sounded like the perfect song for all three being hit.
Yeah, we really hit it there on that one, I think. Yeah, I love that one, man. I love that one. It's like I'll stay with heaven.
Who was the brainchild that came up with the first initial riff?
I did. It was in my phone. I was shuffling through my phone and I found this riff. It was more like Rage Against the Machinish though in my phone. And that's how it started. I think I got off the plane and I sat in the condo with Andrew sitting next to me with his busted Yamaha acoustic. I drop tuned to the A and to a D. I drop tuned it to a D and started playing that riff. That's how it started.
The lyrics so potent. Into your arms I commend my life, and after you're dead, I take back what is mine. I'm always a fan because I grew up in Christianity. My degree is
Yeah,
biblical
yeah.
studies. I love playing devil's advocate, just to
Mhm.
pick with people, not so much crudely, but you have to challenge everything. And this is something that like screams to my heart, like yes, yeah, let's play around with this idea. What was the writing process for the lyrics? Was there something in your mind like, oh, I really want to hit this, or was it more of just the random on?
That was again my wife's idea. My wife, I was like, "Well, look, the lesson. So, what do you think I should write about?" She said, "Why don't you write about the mistakes you make as a younger man and looking back at them as an older man?" And that's what the song's about. So, take back what's mine is that now I've grown up, all the things I fucked up. This younger man who is me. Now I'm taking back control of it. So that's what the song's actually about.
May I ask, what else has she inspired? Like, But I mean, we try and keep it personal, keep out of the personal lives of you guys because you're in the public eye. But just hearing from this alone, how much she's been inspiring the music, I am a little curious. Like, yeah, how did you get so lucky, man?
I don't know. I just did. I met her 1980, end of 1986, long time ago. And when I first saw her, I just felt. I looked at her and I thought, I feel like I've known this girl for 1,000 years or something. You get that feeling. I got that feeling. That's the only feeling I've ever gotten looking at her. And here we are, whatever, 36 years later, still together. And we've had a whirlwind romance and love affair and relationship, up and down, very energetic, both negative and positive. We survived the whole rock and roll career, which is amazing in itself, right? So I'm a very lucky guy. I'm a very lucky guy. I'm here. I'm on the other end. I'm alive, and I still have my wife, and I still have my family. It's pretty rare.
A blessing, no doubt. But I'm also taking notes. So get me a Brooklyn girl because the Philly one didn't work out. Got it. Rocking. Yeah, when you guys were writing last year, you guys came up with 6 brand new songs, and we're still in high anticipation to get some of those. What song really spoke to you? What song are you like, I really am itching to release this one? Because the singles you've released are pretty powerful in themselves. What's the next song that's going to be, a great representation, especially with the name change?
I think the next one, Promise Song, is going to be great. I'm very, 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 very excited. That's coming out the 30th, the 29th, or the 30th of this month. It's called the Promise Song. It's very Zeppelin-esque. Not, it doesn't sound like Zeppelin, but it's a Zeppelin-esque approach, riff-wise. It's a rabbit too. It's fast. It's a faster song, upbeat, more upbeat, very energetic and powerful.
I wanted to know how you guys felt in the band because when I look at the initial band you all were in, and then this band, I'm like, everybody kind of switched roles to an extent. Everybody's taking a job that they didn't necessarily have at the other band, or they're doing something a little bit different. And it makes me wonder how the back and forth is because again, every time you guys are on an interview, everybody's excited, the energy, but then it's just friends having a beer, and it makes it so much sweeter.
I think that while we're developing this stuff and we're sitting down together, everyone is pretty much taking an equal role. You know what I mean? You got to come up with some raw material and then develop it from there. So Johnny has a lot to say about the arrangement, what we're doing, and obviously Kirk does. And if Kirk's got a part, he's gonna like take the lead on that part. You know what I'm saying? And if I got a part, I'm gonna take it. But I'm always open to suggestion too. So it's kind of like we don't know what our roles are. We're like shuffling them around at this point still, and we haven't. I think that's why it's fun still. You know what I mean? Nobody's fell into this. Well, I'm the leader, or I'm this, or you know what I mean. So we're still trying to figure it out together and use whatever talents you have in the room to get to that and figure it out.
Well, everyone's been real. I can't explain the positivity behind the music, behind the band. It's so genuine to see. I think of Kirk always talking about you, always praising you, how much of a fan he was of you guys, and then finally meeting you, and now you guys are breaking bread with the music. On a side note, I was wondering what musician did you have that opportunity to do that with? Like you were a huge fan of them. You finally got to say hello. I was always curious, like if you met, Iommi.
I did meet Iommi. I met all the Black Sabbath guys. We toured with them when on their first reunion and stuff. But probably one of the most surreal moments in my life is me and Johnny played on a song and to help develop a song with Bill Ward from Black Sabbath. So Bill Ward, sent me music, and I was like, well, and then called me in my kitchen. He's talking, hey, Kenny, and going over music and what the ideas of what we were going to do in my kitchen on the phone with Bill Ward from Black Sabbath. And he was awesome to us. He flew us out to LA, and we tripped to the studio every day telling Black Sabbath road stories and Typo to road stories. And then we'd spend the day in ecstasy laying down tracks in the studio on a song. I laid down vocals and guitars. Johnny played drums. It was amazing, an amazing experience. What a great guy.
Considering everything you've done, you've had so many complex. You said this project, Sun Don't Shine, is the combination of it all. The just the genuine, like, everything I've learned, everything I've taken. What would you say is the biggest important lesson from your career that you've been able to implement into this project?
To keep an open mind. Keep an open mind and always listen a few times before you judge something. Keep an open mind and have more confidence and faith in the music itself just happening. Try to control it so much, you know what I mean? If you're given the chance, you'll try to control every aspect of that shit because you're afraid, it's not going to be good enough, whatever. So the spontaneity is really what I brought to this from experience.
Cool.
A lack thereof spontaneity. Most of my past experience was the opposite of spontaneity.
Very controlled, structured.
Yes, always. And this has been a very let go and let it happen thing.
I always end these with the most important question. Sometimes it's a little open-ended. It's open to interpretation, but I always ask, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Yeah. The first time I had mentioned, the first time I was in rehab was in 2000. And the band was pretty up at top of our game then, or whatever, and I was pretty fucked up, and I didn't give a shit about anything. And I remember I made a really, really close friend in there with a police officer. I'm not gonna say his name or anything, but just play chess every day. And we talked about life a lot and the shit I've done. It was that's what you talk about in rehab, the shit you've done, right? And he was older than me, and he told me at the time, you know what, Kenny? One day you're gonna have to answer for your actions. And it went totally over my head. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a guitar player in a rock band. I'm doing great. What an answer? What are you bullshit, man? Give me, everything was a game, a joke. But I lived long enough to find out what he meant by that. And that's true. Everything you do in life, one day you're gonna have to answer for your actions. So you better think about what you're doing a little more carefully. Because one day, if you don't pay for it now, you might pay for it 10 years from now or 20. I always stuck with me. But I never really understood what he meant until many years after.
Ladies and gentlemen, wise words to live by. That is Kenny Hickey, the legend. Go check out Sun Don't Shine. You can find them online, sundontshine.com. You got them on IG. You also got them on Apple Music, Spotify. You can find them anywhere. I always go to Facebook. That's the easiest one for me. But you got to go check out their latest singles, Dreams Always Die with the Sun and Cryptomnesia. I think I got it right this time. Yes, I got it right this time. So go check them out. They're releasing music the 29th and the 30th. You're going to love it. Sir, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
And everybody else, be smart, be mindful, rock on. As always, ninja out. I've had all kinds of situations. I've had some people like, yeah, I don't believe in your God. Let's do it. I was like,
religious or not, everyone prays, whether they let you know or not.
But I'm saving that. That's a quote.
You can release it.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. Oh, your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.